That unfinished task is still working on you. You sit down to focus, open a tab, and before the page even loads you remember the dentist appointment you still have not booked. Then you pause and realize you no longer remember why you opened the tab. One email sits unanswered. One form is half done. One text needs a reply you keep postponing. It keeps flashing back while you are trying to work, and the story you tell yourself is simple. You are distracted, flaky, or just bad at concentrating. Psychology has a name for part of this pattern: the Zeigarnik effect, first described after observations by Zeigarnik. Unfinished tasks tend to stay more mentally available than finished ones. What you do not know, at least not yet, is that this does not start as a moral problem. It starts as a control system treating an open loop as unresolved. By the end, the thing you call weak focus will have a more precise label: attention pulled by incompletion, not proof of bad character. The question is why one unfinished task can keep draining attention long after you decided to ignore it. The mechanism starts with goal state monitoring. When you form an intention, the brain does not store only information, it also tracks whether the goal is complete. In standard cognitive psychology, working memory and cognitive control help keep pending demands available. The prefrontal cortex is heavily involved in maintaining task goals. The anterior cingulate cortex is associated with conflict monitoring and control allocation. This is not a single switch, but a network that keeps asking whether something still needs action. The Zeigarnik effect fits into that logic. In her early work, Zeigarnik reported that interrupted or incomplete tasks were recalled better than completed ones. The popular version is often oversimplified, and later findings show the effect depends on context, motivation, and whether the task is truly abandoned or still active. But the core idea is established: incompletion changes mental accessibility. In older environments, keeping unfinished goals available could support survival and social coordination. In a digital environment, the same system is hit by inboxes, browser tabs, unread badges, calendar reminders, and partially drafted messages. The result is simple: attention is limited, and unresolved commitments keep competing for it. Open loops keep pulling attention because the brain learns that unfinished demands may require action at any moment. Each time you see the unread email, the unsubmit expense form, or the message you are avoiding, the goal is refreshed instead of retired. That matters because working memory has limited capacity. In classic research by George A. Miller, the popular 7 ± 2 estimate became famous, though modern models often argue for an even smaller functional capacity depending on the task. The exact number is debated. The constraint is not. Pending goals compete for a narrow system. This is where the modern environment has an advantage over your control systems. It can repeatedly queue the same unfinished item with almost no effort from you. A red badge, a subject line, a notification preview, an open document title. Each queue can reactivate the goal representation. In task-switching research, Sophie Leroy described the related idea of attention residue. When you move from one task to another, part of your attention can remain stuck on the previous one. An unfinished task is especially good at creating that carryover because it has not reached closure. So the cost is not just that you remember the task. The cost is repeated reloading. You start reading, then remember the bill. You return to the document, then think about the text you still owe. You try to force focus, but control is now spent managing interference. Ignoring the task does not mark it complete. In many cases it makes the conflict more repetitive, because the goal is still active and still unresolved. That is the point where simple incompletion becomes cognitive tension. There is a detail here that most people miss. The brain is not only reacting to unfinished work, it is reacting to unfinished work that still has no contained path forward. In research by E. J. Masacampo and Roy F. Baumeister on unfulfilled goals, intrusive thoughts about a task were reduced when people made specific plans for completing it. The popular summary is often too loose, but the useful point is solid. Progress is not the only thing that calms a goal. A credible next step can do it. That is why Deal with Health stuff keeps returning, while Call the Clinic Tuesday at 9 often loses some of its grip the moment it is written down. The loop has not been completed, but it has been structured. That twist matters because modern life produces the opposite condition all day. Not one large unfinished project, but dozens of vague fragments. Reply to that message. Check the insurance portal. Finish the slide. Read the article you saved. Decide what to do about the strange charge on the card. None of them fully close. None of them fully disappear. Sophie Leroy's work on attention residue helps explain the result. When one task is not mentally resolved, part of attention remains attached to it, and the next task receives weaker engagement. In lived terms, you move through the day leaving small pieces of yourself behind. The laptop closes, but the meeting draft stays active. Dinner ends, but the form is still mentally open. Sleep starts, and a half-written email returns because nothing in the system told the brain it was safely contained. The cost compounds because the day stops having clean edges. Work becomes shallow. Breaks are not real breaks. Recovery is interrupted by low-grade monitoring. A year of that does not just produce clutter. It trains self-attribution. You stop saying, "My environment keeps creating unresolved cues," and start saying, "I am scattered, I never follow through, or I cannot focus." That identity shift is the deepest layer. In psychology, repeated friction without clear relief can produce passivity and shame. Learned helplessness is a more specific experimental concept than everyday language usually allows, but the overlap in feeling is recognizable. Effort stops feeling like closure. Even your notes app can start to feel accusatory. You avoid opening the list because every unchecked item looks like evidence about you. So the real question is no longer how to remember more. It is how to build a system that tells the brain a task is captured, planned, or finished. The turn comes from that distinction. Open loops do not calm down when you scold yourself. They calm down when the control system gets evidence that uncertainty has been reduced. That is why willpower fails so often here. Willpower tries to suppress the signal while leaving the source unchanged. The cue is still present. The goal is still vague. The conflict monitor still has reason to keep checking. A better fix works on the mechanism directly. First, external capture reduces the need to keep a goal active in working memory. This is one reason offloading to a trusted system matters. Not 10 scattered scraps. One place. Second, defining a next physical action converts an abstract concern into an executable plan. That matches the Masacampo and Baumeister finding. A specific completion plan reduces intrusive thinking more effectively than vague intention. Third, closure rules reduce repeated reactivation. If an item is scheduled, delegated, deleted, or done, it no longer sits in the category of undefined demand. This is basic neuroplasticity in practice. Repeatedly pairing a cue with containment instead of rumination retrains the response. The brain learns that seeing an obligation does not require open-ended monitoring. It requires one of a few clear outcomes. Cue routine restructuring matters here more than effort. If the phone, inbox, tabs, and notes are arranged to generate hidden commitments, the circuitry for goal monitoring will keep firing. If the environment routes each demand into capture, next action, or closure, the same circuitry has less unresolved material to carry. That is also where identity changes. Not because you repeat a slogan, but because the evidence changes. You become a person who closes loops by design, not by last-minute force. The practical shift is simple. Stop asking yourself to remember and start giving the brain proof that the loop is under control. So the sequence matters. First, stop creating hidden loops. When something appears, capture it in one trusted place immediately or decide it is not a commitment. Do not leave it in the inbox, in a tab, in a text thread, and in your head at the same time. That multiplies cues. One item, one home. Second, convert each vague obligation into the next visible action. Not sort taxes. Not fix relationship stuff. Use language the motor system can act on. Download the form. Email Sam 2 available times. Call the clinic Tuesday at 9. If it belongs on a calendar, schedule it. If it takes little time and can be finished now, finish it. If it is not real anymore, delete it on purpose. The point is not productivity theater. The point is to give the brain a credible status signal. Third, clear and renegotiate regularly. Some loops stay open because they should never have been promises. Review the list. Mark items done. Drop the ones that are fantasy. Renegotiate the ones that change. Closure is not only completion. It is also honest cancellation. That is the identity reframe. You are not bad at focus. You have been living inside an environment that keeps goals half open and keeps cueing them back into awareness. When that one checkbox keeps orbiting your mind, the answer is not more guilt. It is proper closure. Open loops keep pulling attention until the brain believes the loop is closed. Once capture is trusted, next actions are specific, and commitments are either finished or consciously released, the signal weakens for a reason. You are not unreliable by nature. You have been running an open loop system. If this changed how you see it, the next story goes deeper into how attention gets trapped before you even notice. This one is closed.